Once upon a mundane morning, Barb's day got busy without warning. A realtor in need of an open house sign. No, 50 of them, and designed before 9.
My head hurts.
Any mighty tools to help with this plight?
Aha!
Barb made her move. She opened Canva and got in the groove.
Bulk creating Canva sheets. Create 50 signs fit for suburban streets.
Done in a click, all complete.
Sweet!
Now, imagine what your dreams can become when you put imagination to work at canva.com.
Chronic spontaneous urticaria, or chronic hives with no known cause. It's so unpredictable. It's like playing pinball. Itchy, red bumps start on my arm, then my back. Sometimes my legs. Hives come out of nowhere. And it comes and goes. But I just found out about a treatment option at treatmyhives.com. Take that, chronic hives. Learn more at treatmyhives.com.
Hello and welcome to Away the Podcast. It's Martin here and you are joining us for part 2 of our Q&A podcast. We did part 1 earlier in the week and we have got a boatload of questions to delve into today. And we are going to start by introducing our guests. And we've got the same lineup as we had for the first Q&A pod. First of all, Ant Watson. Hello, mate.
Hello, yes, enjoyed it so much to have come back for more. Enjoyed being so positive, so we're going to continue that forward momentum, aren't we?
We certainly are. And Andrew Smithson's our other guest there. And Andrew, I think you've been busy prepping out the route for the end of season bus parades we left the last episode on.
Yeah, I've got it all mapped out now. I'm going to keep it under wraps, just, so there's a little bit of surprise, but I've got all the cones on order and all the road closures and this, that and the other. Actually, do you know, in all seriousness, I don't know who knows the department I work for. I actually do know the blokes that would have to oversee that. And a couple of the lads, or one of them, he's got a great big Sunderland tattoo on his leg, so he would probably have no problem whatsoever putting in a bit of overtime and trying to work that route out. So if you're listening, mate, get cracking, start doing the paperwork, because it's going to be busy come May.
They might have to pull the dust-covered plans out from the 1920s or something, give them a shake off and see what streets still exist. And
half the roads on that are probably closed down now. There'll be housing estates or something. So yeah, they're going to need to update it.
Get the horses out. We've got a trophy to parade. Right, we will get on to the questions. Now, we did talk briefly at the end of the last episode about where the Sunderland team kind of ranks in comparison to others that we've seen in the past. And Andrew, Joe Braun, at Joe Braun 3 or the 3rd, says, is this the best team Sunderland have ever had? Every player seems happy to do their role and happy for others to succeed. It doesn't seem like anybody has an ego or is upset not to be the star player. And there's an awful lot to be said about that, isn't it? And this is one of the remarkable things I think that we've managed to achieve. Because it's one thing to go and buy a load of players. It's another thing to go and buy a load of players who've got the right attitude, mentality, and to then have a coach, a head coach, and the coaching staff, of course, who've moulded them into a team that seems really united as a genuine team. You saw the reaction to the Talby goal on Saturday where the subs were coming on. Everyone was going nuts. Everyone's congratulating each other. Even, I don't know if you spotted this, Chris Rigg ran over to Broby, and Broby was just kind of stood there in the box. Chris Rigg ignored all of the players chasing after Talby, and he went to Broby. And there just seems to be a really strong team ethic and camaraderie. That's hugely important for a team to dig themselves out of situations, to show the strength of character that they showed on Saturday. Is this the best? I know it's a big question. It's an impossible question to answer, but we can modify it. Is this the best team that you've ever seen Sunderland have?
I think it probably is. Reed's team, maybe on the day, could be a bit more, and well, depends what you define as entertaining. They could be a bit more attacking, I definitely think this team has stronger foundations to continue this, because we saw under the Reed era, it went pretty badly wrong in the end. That was kind of like a flash in the bottle, whereas what we now have, is it a flash in the bottle? No, it's a flash in the
Or a
pan,
pan.
or lightning in the
Lightning
bottle.
in the pan, a flash in the bottle.
Yeah. Listen, with Sunderland, we do things differently. I think we are trying to set the club up for a longer term, more solid run at things. When we were talking earlier about the types of players we brought into the club, if you look at their profiles, they were all from teams that were either winning titles or winning cups or qualifying for Europe. We weren't signing survival experts. I think there's a very different mindset to teams that want to win things, and they are perhaps more likely to have either experienced it or seen their best mate in the team have to drop out for the good of the side. You know, there might be a particular game where it's important that they do things differently, so you drop out of the side, and you learn that way to not be full of yourself and banging on the door, complaining because you're not in the side for a period. We do have a mentality that appears strong. I mean, we came from behind against Chelsea. How many times in Premier League history of Sunderland come from behind away from home to win a game? I bet it's not that many times, you know. And yet we did that. We did it against Brentford earlier on in the season. We went behind with about 15 minutes to go. And yet the team just brushed that off and continued. So there's a real mentality there. There's real positivity. I think I think we are the best team I've ever seen. I'm not. That's a bit of a grey area, that one, and maybe you could say Phillips and Quinn were just unmatchable. You were never going to have a team that's as good as those two. So maybe one or two individuals might be a little bit better, but overall, for me, I think we're there, and I am confident that longer term we'll see more from this group and from this Sunderland era.
Now, Andrew, I'm going to stick with you here because this question leads on from that, and it's from SAFC SoCal on the website. And he said, picking up a conversation Chris and Andrew had yesterday, which I presume was the post-match reaction pod to the Chelsea game. The Peter Reid side of 1999 were also on 17 points from the first 9 games, but which is the better side now, or that team that went on to our highest finish since 1956? So you kind of answered that to a large extent, but he says, for me, or he or her says, I shouldn't assume, for me, today's team has a better defence, but could not quite match Johnson, Quinn, Phillips, and Sumby for attacking prowess. Now, Alan Johnson, of course, never played in the Premier League with us, so you can kind of discount him from that conversation. But Tony Bang, another good username, at Tony Bang 554307 on X says, is this the best Sunderland defence in your lifetime? And where would you rank this Sunderland defence against other Premier League defences? Now, this question about the defence is a really interesting one. As you were saying about the Chelsea game, you concede that early goal, and we've all seen that script, haven't we? We concede an early goal against a team like Chelsea or a team like Manchester United, and you end up going, oh shit, we're in trouble here. And I must admit, my initial reaction to conceding that goal after 4 or 5 minutes was going, it's going to be a bloody long afternoon, this one. But again, it's a different team. It's almost a different club in terms of mentality. But the defence is where it's built upon. The defence and the work on the defensive side in the likes of Xhaka and Siddiqui, but the mentality that runs throughout the side to work for each other, and all of these kind of questions linked together. But how important is that defence? Do you reckon? How impressed have you been with it so far?
Oh, it's rock solid. It is really good. I mean, there was a couple of question marks about Chelsea's goal, but again, that just shows the standard we're at now, that we can concede to such an expensively assembled team. You know, they're star-studded. They've got God knows how many medals around their necks. And there we are thinking, we'll maybe give them a bit of an easy goal there. The defence is brilliant. And as well, there's been a couple of changes in there from game to game for various reasons. You know, Ronaldo was injured. Aldrete dropped out of the team because it was concussion, I believe. Now, I think it was you said this, Martin. Beforehand, you're panicking about that, going, what we're going to do without Aldrete? He's been fantastic. With respect to the lad, did anybody even notice he wasn't in the team? You know, we picked up without him and managed really well. I hadn't realised that the promotion team under Reid had been on the same number of points after this number of games.
No, I didn't.
might
I'm
be-
going to check it. I'm going to check it just to make sure we're not giving fake news out. You know.
They had an easy
Yeah.
start, though. You know what I mean?
Aye, of course. But Martin, while you're doing that, if you don't mind, you're going to hate me because I'm giving you extra work. Could you have a look and see what our defensive record was like after those games, please? Just to compare the two. I know you're going to have to take your shoes and socks off and start counting fingers and toes here, but...
Well, hold on. So that 1999.
It's going to be worse because we got beat 4-0 our first game.
Correct.
Oh, that's a good point, yeah.
So we obviously got beat off Chelsea in the first game. Got 3 points at home to Watford, so that's 3. We drew at home to Arsenal, that's 4. Lost away at Leeds. Beat the Mags away, so that's 7. Drew at home to Coventry, 8. Beat Leicester at home, 11. Beat Derby away, 14th. That was our 8th game. And beat Sheffield Wednesday at home in our 9th game, which would be 17.
Yeah.
So we'd conceded 1, 2, 3, 4. So we only conceded 8, and 4 of those were against Chelsea.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. I think that there's a very good point in there about Phillips, Quinn, and Summerby in the Premier League. They were really good for us. The difference between then and now, though, is we often talk about, it's rare that you would have the same 11. The squad now, it is a squad game. I know that's a cliche. It's a squad game. So you probably don't expect Isidore to score as many goals as somebody like Phillips did, because Isidore isn't guaranteed to start every game. There'll be matches where Lebris wants a player with a different style for whatever reason. How about this for a comparison? Maybe the Peter Reid team had one or two better individuals. Even that's harsh, because I mean, Xhaka, Christ Almighty, he's one of them. Last season he was up there with the Ballon d'Or nominees and that. So it's maybe hard. It's hard to justify that point. But maybe the Peter Reid team had one or two better individuals, whereas the club now have much more depth. The squad now is much more robust and can handle changes, and there's players on the subs bench who justifiably could be expecting to walk into Premier League teams. Excuse me, Gertruda. I keep going back to him. He's finally made his first start in the Premier League. Look at his background. When did you ever think Sunderland would be in a position where a player of that calibre and experience was having to make do with a place on the bench? It's unreal.
Certainly is. And I think it's really difficult to compare, because I just think football's changed so dramatically. Like I just don't see a team coming up from the Championship and the vast majority of that team achieving a top half finish in the Premier League next season. I think the gap is far too wide between the two. But on the website, Stephen Hope's given us a question talking about the similarities between now and 1999. And he said, in 1999, when we didn't invest after Christmas, if we want to repeat the same pattern, what should we spend big on in January? And I think if we kind of cast our minds back to that season, we went into the Christmas period in third place, and we beat Southampton 2-0 at home. I think, was that Kevin Kilban's debut? It was. He set up a goal, didn't he, for Phillips in the very last minute.
Yes.
But after that,
Yeah.
we went on a really bad run. I think from that Southampton game to, let's have a look, Everton at home on the 25th of March, we did not win a game. So we had this real sort of surge, all the momentum took us up, all that sort of stuff. We were sitting pretty up in the top bit of the Premier League table. And whether it was tiredness or whether it was expectation or whatever it was, things didn't quite go to plan for the next few months. And we ended up kind of seeing that season out and getting that 7th place finish. So I guess the question is, what do we need to do? Do we need to do something in January to avoid the same thing happening?
Christ, that is a good question. If you're looking at January, do we need someone in? They're already seeing out that there's money to spend, and they've got people in mind for January. So I think whether or not we need someone, they're bringing people in. You look at it now. I mean, and it's in a lot of hindsight of taking injuries out of the way. You look at that. You look at that 11 on Saturday. Does anyone, bar from being a world beater, come into that side and improve it? You're looking at maybe not. We mentioned Traore in the last podcast. Is there someone that if we're playing that formation, there's someone that can bring in? But you look at my end of Brobbey on the bench. Who Brobbey came on and changed the game, didn't he? So at the minute, no. But like I say, you're looking at 2 or 3 months' time. If we pick up we all know if we pick up an injury to Xhaka, we'll struggle because we haven't got anyone who can match, Granit Xhaka. So, maybe another Granit Xhaka would be nice. If we can clone him, that'd be wonderful. Make him 10 years younger. That'd be outstanding. But no, I think at the minute we're okay. I think they've done and this is what the club done very well in the summer. Got the targets that they needed in the positions. They got them in very, very quickly, didn't they? And, the likes of Granit Xhaka came, Habib Diarra came very early, Noah Siddiqui and stuff. And then, we brought in Mukiele and Geertruida a little bit later on, who've both come in. And as Andrew's pointed out, Geertruida was outstanding on Saturday. And we're now looking at, does Omar Alderete get back in, who's been outstanding as well? It's crazy. It's crazy how, the depth that we've got. Looking at it, obviously, if we need, I still think another forward winger, you may be like a right winger, an out-and-out right winger I would like. I think Talby can play there, but I think Talby's better on the left, which makes it a huge problem for Simon Ardringham at the minute, by the way. Where does he come in? And he's a fantastic footballer. So, it's a class headache for him to have, but in January, I think we will make a signing or two. Where I haven't got a clue, to be honest. But I don't think we'll make that mistake. And I think it's a good question. But you've got to remember, back then the transfer window didn't exist. We could bring players in whenever we needed to. You know what I mean? And we brought in Eric Ra, didn't we? Over I think it was November, December time when we needed a centre midfielder. Sorry, when we had a couple of injuries.
I think he came in the summer, didn't he? Because he played in Kevin Ball's testimonial game.
Ah, that's right.
I think
he
was around the reserves for a couple of weeks, wasn't there?
There was someone that brought in, wasn't there, who, it come in, a little bit in the middle when we needed somebody. I think Kilban.
Well, Kilban.
Yeah.
Kilban came in December.
Kilban and that. And, yeah, so I think, like I say, I think, and I don't, I'm with that. I'm obviously going back to Andrew's, I'm with Andrew. I don't like to compare then and now because they both give us, that really one, being a teenager growing up and seeing that side was somewhere where we've never been before as fans, you know what I mean? And now to have it again in kind of situation where it's a lot harder for promoted sides to do that. I think back then it was a little bit easier because the division was still in its infancy a little bit. It was 6 or 7 years in. And then now where you've got a lot of established sides, you've got the top four and all that stuff and the amount of money that's flying around and stuff, it is a lot harder. And I think we've done such a good job. I think we're just looking at the both fantastic sides. I think probably is the best side on paper with, you look who's coming in and stuff like that. But yeah, they both gave me wonderful moments. So I'm just happy. I'm just happy, being where we are. It's class, isn't it?
And that player you were thinking of that we brought in, I've just checked it out there. It was Milton Nunes. That was
That's
who
the
we
one.
signed. Yeah,
That's the
that's
one.
who we signed during the season to give us a boost. So
Yeah.
maybe that's a lesson to suggest we don't need to panic too much about
I don't think
signing
we'd be
someone.
signing a Honduran wonder kid who's the wrong one, I suppose. I think
Yeah, yeah.
that's maybe gonna, answer the question, is this the best side that you've ever seen? I think it might be better behind the scenes than what it was back then. What a legend, Milton Nunes.
I think the big difference, or one of the big differences when you're looking at 1999 and looking at the current team, is we do not know the potential of this team. We kind of knew the potential of the 1999 team because we'd seen them for the past 2 or 3 seasons developing together. You look at the players who haven't really got going yet. You look at the likes of Diarra. You look at the likes of Adingra. There's a number of other players. How's my end going to develop? There's all of these questions that you can see the potential in. And even like we know for a fact there's a ton more to come from Siddiqui. There's more to come from Mukiele if he plays a right back or wherever he plays. And there's Robin Roof's outstanding goalkeeper. He's not at his peak. So that's the exciting thing for me, kind of looking at that team going, we're only seeing the tip of the potential that this team's got. And I'm really looking forward to Diarra coming back because I think there's a great player in there. But Andrew, there's a few more questions about January. I'm going to read a few out and we can kind of dig into this a little bit more. So Jan R on the website says, do we really need to bring in multiple signings in January? Yes, AFCON is looming, but some players, or maybe most, won't be away that long. So what happens after AFCON? Players want to play and we already have squad depth, in my opinion. So do we just manage with what we have? Joe Lewins on X says, we are well organised and have great depth in defence. Do we need another central midfield player, as we don't seem confident to use Neil, even though Siddiqui was hobbling? And is right wing a possible priority addition in January? And John Harrison at SAFC25_John on X says, if we keep this level of form up and stay in and around the top 6, will the ownership invest even further? And if so, what positions, given we look so strong? Let's get carried away, man. So there's a few little bits in there, but what do you reckon?
Well, I agree. I agree with that last point. Let's get carried away. I'm always up for getting carried away. There's lots of good points there. Can I just quickly ask, because he was mentioned a few moments ago by you two lads, was Adingra injured at the weekend, or was he?
Yeah, I think he was injured. Yeah,
muscle tightness apparently.
So just a minor thing, was it?
Yeah.
Right. Fair dues. Yeah, thanks, gents. I just realised there as we mentioned him, crikey, I didn't even see him on the bench. Do we need to bring players in? I can well understand why people have looked at the past and thought, oh, we didn't strengthen when we were on top. Was that a misstep? I don't know this time, because the club always are working 2 or 3 windows in advance almost. And I don't think the club are likely to just jump into something just for the sake of it. I think Broby perhaps was one they were probably going to bring in later down the line, but then suddenly he became available, so they were in a position to do that quickly. And by the way, that's a nice position to be in, that the club are on such a sound financial footing that there's the ability there to make something happen if needs be, but they aren't struggling to find money if somebody comes available, and they're also not so desperate to spend money they'll just lash it out on anybody. I wonder if what we do in January is what we've seen in the past, and we are bringing in players who won't necessarily be in the first team straight away, but are expected to use a couple of months to get themselves settled, and then be really firing the next year. We've seen that a lot with Sunderland. We've also got to remember, we've got Romain Mundle to come back at some point. We need to give him a fair crack. So is there space for new players? I don't know if there is. I always like us signing new players, and I do get that desire to do it when we're in a position of strength. It's nice, though, that we are not desperate. We used to, in the past, be counting down to the transfer window, just hoping that we were going to sign somebody who would hit the ground running and pull the team out of trouble. We don't need to do that now. As for Siddiqui hobbling, is it just me? The poor lad's forever hobbling or pulling a tight. He works himself into the ground, and I think at the end of every game he's got some sort of knock, or he's trying to like stretch out some sort of muscle strain. Famous last words, of course, when it turns out that he's now on the long-term injured list. I think that's just something we're going to have to get used to, because there's been a couple of times I've thought, oh man, that's him coming off. And then by the end of the game, he's ran another couple of extra kilometers, and you're like, oh, there's nothing the matter with him.
He's fine.
So I think that's just part of the nature of his game, and he's always going to be in the wars.
I think the interesting thing with January, there's a few bits. So I think I always go back to that notion that you only recruit and spend money in January if your recruitment's crap. So clubs who are desperate go out and splash the cash in January to try to get a band-aid solution to things. So I think ideally we don't want to see the club going out and almost panic buying in January, because that isn't what we do. That's not what we're about. Our recruitment's been really good. So I don't think we'll actually need to. That said, if an opportunity comes up to buy a player who they want, we will go and get them. You look at Enzo Lefebvre coming in last January. Great player who can opportunity to get him there and then. If we'd wait till the summer, the opportunity might not have been there.
Yeah.
So, if there's an opportunity to bring in somebody who they really fancy, they'll go and seize it. And as we've seen all throughout the summer, if there's an opportunity to get a better player in the position, they'll take it. And you look at, sentimentality, we've had you keep Dan Neil in the side and other players in the side, Patterson in goal. But they've been so laser focused on the need to improve and the need to step up the standards to compete in the Premier League, that if somebody comes available in any position, we might go, you can't replace him. If somebody better comes available and they can get him, they will. And I think it's really hard to predict. I think if you're looking at it from our perspective as fans, you might go, maybe get a strong midfielder in to be Xhaka's understudy. Maybe get a right winger in to add a bit more competition there, or somebody who can do what Lefebvre does on the left over there. But it's all kind of ifs and buts. It's dead easy for us to kind of sit there and say that, isn't it? But it's a very nice position to be in as we approach the new year. We'll take a very short break and we'll be back very soon.
Hey there, it's Dr. Sanjay Gupta with some exciting news to share. CNN is now streaming. That means you can read, watch, and stream everything in one subscription. You can watch news live 24/7. You can also explore catch-up videos and explainer videos, and you can also watch a library of CNN's originals, including my latest documentary, It Doesn't Have to Hurt. Just go to cnn.com/all-access.
Welcome back to Away, the podcast, for the second part of today's Q&A session. Now, I've got a question for you two from David on the website. What has happened to the SAFC free match day Wi-Fi? Last season it worked really nicely, but so far this season, nothing. Neither of you two shed any light on. It's all the connections that Register Briss has been talking about in the team, and must have screwed the connections in the stadium.
I have absolutely no idea. I don't tend to look at my phone as much, and I don't know. I mean, do you know what it is? I've never really had much of an issue where I sit with it. I think I might be one of the lucky ones. I don't know what. It's just, it goes to show that some of the questions that you get are class, because obviously we have such a fantastic season. We've got people worrying about the Wi-Fi at the stadium, but there we go. I like I say, I've always been lucky with it, mate. So it's not been an issue with me, but I get why people are upset about it. But if the team's putting in this quality for 90 minutes, you didn't even look at your phone. I think we're just checking how high we are in the league. Oh, we're top now. Get in. But
That's fine.
it is something that you said you would address, wasn't it? And fingers crossed it and got that sorted. So everyone can have wonderful Wi-Fi in the stadium.
Yeah, if you want to get on your phone and check the league position, nobody can blame you, can they?
I love the idea of me at half time having 5 minutes to look at my phone, because I'm usually queuing at the kiosks underneath to get the kids another tray of chips or whatever it is that they want me to
Korean
fork out
chicken.
for. Yeah. Well, apparently the curry and chips is very nice. I don't eat it myself, but apparently that's very nice at the stadium. So there's a recommendation. In all seriousness, my mate who sits in the West Stand has mentioned that this year it's gone backwards, that element, that reception. So there might be something there. Is it? I mean, I'm not well up with tech. Is it purely a case of we're now selling out? So you've got more people trying to use the systems? Is that
That's what I
possible?
think it is,
I don't know.
Yeah, I actually think it's that. I think you've hit it in on the head there. You're looking at now, and on average, we're an extra 10,000 fans there. So it might be, I can't remember what they call it, bandwidth, isn't it? It might be that, you got 48,000 fans all there. It might be that. To answer the lad's question, if he puts that towards the fan group who have meetings with them every month, every quarter month or something, where they have the meetings with. If they put it towards then, it's a question that they will ask. So if you can put that on towards that, then it is a question that we'll ask. So
good point, and I've just have to correct myself. I've gone and called it the West Stand. It's not the West Stand, is it anymore? I'm doing one of those old man things. It's the Jimmy Montgomery Stand. And I tell you what, one thing about the reception or the bandwidth there, it mustn't be too bad, because there's 3 or 4 people sit round me at the matches. They spend all game bloody filming themselves and posting up videos on their social media about, apparently one of them's got a bit of a following as a YouTuber talking about Sunderland, which is nice to see, but I'm just too busy watching the match. I'm like, how have you got the time to be like talking into a camera? I'm too busy.
A lifetime ban for anybody who does that in a football match, I'm telling you.
Do you know what? Again, it's just we mentioned before. Well, it might have been on the other podcast about elder statesmen here, because I completely agree. But you probably bring Johnny on, or whatever, in the next podcast.
Probably is Johnny.
No.
Down with the kids. I have heard, and I can't confirm these rumours, that the bandwidth issue is a direct result of Habib Diarra uploading his TikToks. Apparently, my son told me that, but who knows? We'll move on now. This is another question, Andrew, about January, and this is an interesting one. So, Le Macam Croissant on the website says, by my rough reckoning, the value of the squad has increased by 150 to 200 million in the last few weeks. I think I might get him to do my books just to value some stuff for us, because that's quite generous. But in the January window, should we cash in and reinvest, or keep the current squad together till the end of the summer to guarantee survival? I don't see any logic or any way, shape or form that you'd cash in on the players who we brought in and have impressed so far in the hope of reinvesting to get better for the last few months of the season personally. But Andrew, do you have any differing opinions?
No. I mean, I know how podcasts work. We're meant to draw out these conversation points and have a bit of back and forth, but should we cash in? No. I'd be devastated if the club were to do that. I know everyone's got a price, and if somebody comes in with like eye water and numbers for a player, the club will have to consider it. But there is, I'll say it again, no. Sorry, Le Macam. What was it? Le Macam Croissant. Yes, I didn't even know I could speak French, but apparently I can now. Le Macam Croissant. Fair dues. Aye, fair enough. Aye. fair dues. I can understand why some people might think let's get the most value we can out for players, but that would be a backwards step, I think, at the moment, and might take away some of this feel-good factor that we've got.
No, I think we'd all agree that as long as the club aren't overspending to the extent that they're putting the club in danger, then how they run as a business, I kind of not bothered about. I don't want them to have a really good profit on the balance sheet at the end of the financial year. I want to see the best team possible on the pitch. And again, if players become available and we can buy them and they improve what we've got, brilliant. But I wouldn't be doing anything proactive to go, we can make 20 million on Robin Roofs now. We can sell him. You go, oh shit, we need to buy another goalkeeper now. Oh, what's his price? 45 million. Brilliant. We've just screwed ourselves.
Exactly.
I do think the conversation becomes different in the summer, because there will be some players who, after just a season with us, have got the real big boys circling, and we might have to then look at it. But yeah, not at the moment. Let's keep hold of these lads as long as we can.
And I completely agree. It's a good conversation, but it's probably a little bit of a different conversation, isn't it? Because there's a number of aspects come into that, right? So it's what's been sold to them initially. So have the club gone to players like Siddiqui and said, look, you come here, we'll pay you this, sign this contract. If we get a bid of however much from this sort of club, we're not going to stand in your way. We saw it with Jack Clark. On paper now it looks like a terrible move, but at the time it looked like a good move for him. Half decent money. It wasn't great money. Half decent money. Get a step up. We're not going to stand in your way. You've done a great job for us. That becomes a sell to the next load of players who come in. And what we need to think about in that situation next summer is the pool that we'll be recruiting from, hopefully, it'll be higher still than what we were recruiting from this summer just gone. So it's all about progression and not standing in players' way, but getting the maximum for them, but keeping true to your words as well about what's been promised to them.
It's really important that we're true to our word. I mean, I would like to think Sunderland operated like that anyway, but the business side of it makes sense to be like that. And you've just made me think there, Martin. A few people did query the Jack Clark fee and thought we'd maybe cut ourselves short. But if by doing that, we're now, like you say, able to sell that dream to players of a higher level, it's probably worth it.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because you can only do that if you've got stability and if you've got a long-term plan. The vast majority of football clubs are running, if not game to game, month to month, in terms of the tenure of the manager, the pressure on the sporting director if they've got one, all that sort of stuff. And, I know we're kind of going off on a complete tangent now, but because we've had that, you look at going back in the league, nobody would want to go back into League One. But because we had to go back into League One, we've actually had that blank canvas to then build something from. And you can just tell the foundations of the club are really, really strong because it enables us to go and do that sort of thing, take that sort of approach. If you go and game to game, under Ellis Short, for example, that could never have happened because the manager who sold them and gave the thumbs up to that sale wouldn't be there in 12 months' time to reap the rewards of it. So they would have blocked it. So it's, again, I think that just kind of underlines how well you perceive the club's being run at the minute, because it enables you to do that sort of stuff. And on the website, Raoul...
Just very quickly on that, you mentioned the Jack Clark stuff. But you look at Job, you look at what happened with that. It's, we give him I think it was the end of his first season, was stick around another year because there was bids for him. Stick around another year, get us up, and then we'll not stand in your way. And the club stuck to the word. They were true to the word. Job went for a good fee. We got good money for Job. Went to a really good club in Borussia Dortmund. You can argue it hasn't worked out so far for him. I don't watch the Bundesliga, but from what you can gather, he's not happy or whatever. But you look at what that transfer fee brought into us. It brought in Granit Xhaka, Noah Siddiqui, Habib Diarra, and players now who have instantly improved us. And if you say that, you Habib Diarra's of this world who, I know he's injured, but he's a phenomenal footballer. You see, give it a couple of years a year, keep us up, keep us stable, get us to where we want to be next, and we will not stand in your way if a team comes in and pays 50 million for you. And that is the right way to look at it. And that's the only way now, and I've said this loads of times on podcasts, it's the only way football can exist now. You know what I mean? Gone are the days where you're blowing money and taking massive losses because it won't work with PSR. So yeah, it's the right way to go, and we've got now a proven track record of doing that, and that's selling a dream to players to come in here, improve, and if good sides come in for them who are better than us, so be it.
It's you're dead right, and it's obviously how we're communicating it as well. We're obviously having these mature conversations and explaining to people where we see them fitting. So yeah, for me, I would have been panicking about, oh, what you doing letting Job go? But the club is obviously sitting down with players and talking through how they see their career developing. The worst thing to do, because we all hear it on podcasts with ex-players, is lie to them or leave them in a position where they don't know where they stand. As long as these players know where we see things going and we stick to it, it might be upsetting for us to see some of these players go when the time is right, but it is the proper way to do things, and it's imperative to keep the club moving in the way they're trying to move.
I think the other thing and it's just kind of struck me there, and it might be one of those funny things with Jack Clark and with Job, if you asked them on the down low if they'd make the same decision again, I would suspect neither of them would go, oh, yeah, I would do that same thing again. I think both of them would say, you know what, I probably should have stuck around for another year.
Yeah.
And that's also a good thing for us. Obviously, I want those players to go off and have great careers and succeed and flourish and all that sort of stuff. But it might actually be good for us in terms of, you know what, the grass isn't always greener. And you've got to be very careful when you take a perceived step up to make sure it's the right move for you, because there's an awful lot of good stuff going on at Sunderland now that can develop you and all that sort of thing. So it's potentially a little warning for players in the future. And Rowell World on the website says, what are we going to do? And this kind of taps back into a question earlier, but what are we going to do to ensure that we don't allow history to repeat itself? That is fairly to keep reinvesting in the squad, the club facilities. We have the capability to increase the ground capacity. And Rowell World says we should do this without haste. What do you reckon in terms of...
Without haste.
Without haste. Saturday. Add an extra tier on. But it's that point, isn't it? In business context, it's always been said to me, the best time to reinvest, the best time to do things is when you're at the peak. If you spend the money and try and do things when you need a direct outcome from things, if you try and spend money to rectify something, it's the wrong time to spend money. So do you kind of think, I think you can kind of leap off that question and say, is building, it's been talked about the South Stand, hasn't it, expanding that? Is that, would you see that as a priority for the club at present, or do you think we can see how things go for the next year or two?
I wouldn't see it as a priority. I certainly wouldn't be doing it without haste, even though I'm going to like use that in my vocabulary for the rest of the day now. But I think obviously it's a long-term plan, isn't it? Because it has been mentioned. I don't think it needs doing, this year, next year, or something like that, but something in the long term. I kind of agree with that. I think once you get a waiting list of an extra 10,000 fans who are wanting to come, and look, we're selling out every week, so this is great. It's a great start, but we're also doing very well. Now, are we still going to have that climate to come if the results don't go our way? It's that kind of thing. And then the last thing you want is you extend the stadium by 10,000-12,000, and we're only still selling 49,000 seats because there's still 11,000 empty seats there, and then you're going back to, well, how can we afford it and all that stuff. So for me, it's you've got to do it very, very carefully. Very, very carefully, step by step, see what we can do this season, see as high as we can this year, reinvest in getting, again, better players and stuff like that. And then I think everything else will sort itself out. We want to get established first, man. The last thing you want is extend the stadium without haste, and then get relegated in a year and a half's time or whatever. And then we've got a massive, bill to pay for the new stadium. We won't have 48,000 fans there in the Championship. We won't have the players that we've got this season. We'll probably be operating a loss. So at the minute, no, but I'd certainly see within the next 10 years to have an extended stadium, to have all this stuff put right, I think is bang on. I don't want to be, here in 10 years' time when we're all see old and grey, and we're talking about the Wi-Fi being shit still. So, I think it's thought out, and it's always has been the case, hasn't it? And this is what I love about it. Sort out on the pitch first. We're doing that, and then everything else can wait, and we can see where we are in 2 or 3 years' time.
I think Andrew Peter Reid kind of harks back to Bob Murray extending the North Stand, doesn't he? And wishing that money had been available to him to reinvest in the squad and build that squad up. Is it right just to focus on the field at the moment and see what happens after that?
I think so. I think the club, well, we know the club have had these discussions and they will have projections as to when it is right to start extending the ground. I would be a bit like Ant said there. I would be cautious at the moment. I think we need to fully establish ourselves in the Premier League. I know I'm confident in saying we're going to finish mid-table. Doesn't mean that's going to happen in actuality. It wasn't that long ago that it was quite easy to pick up tickets for home games. So yeah, we're doing really well at the moment, but we need to see year upon year of success and sellouts before extending the ground, in my opinion. A couple of other things to note. I don't know if now is the right time to be constructing, just purely because material costs and everything are sky high at the moment. And given the amount we charge for tickets, is that good value? This is like fag packet maths. But is it worth spending 10 million on an extension if it's only going to bring an extra couple of million in a year in ticket sales? I wouldn't be surprised if the club were putting more efforts into extending the hospitality. I've seen rumours kicking around that they can extend hospitality in the East Stand. For me, I think that seems to be where the big uplift is in money. If you can be confident of selling hospitality, which, by the way, I did notice that they're having to do a sale for the Everton game, a flash sale for hospitality. So maybe the market for that isn't quite there yet. But I could see if the club wanted to extend things, it would be the hospitality they go for next, particularly in the Premier League where you have a lot of football tourism. You want to be able to sell packages to people who are going to come along, splash the cash, go to the club shop, drop 500, 600 quid on souvenirs and merchandise. Extending it just for the regular punters, I'd be a bit cautious on. And yeah, let's just make sure this team is the best it can be for now, and let the club behind the scenes keep an eye on it, but maybe just have that down as on the to-do list, down as one for the future rather than anything.
I mean, you look at the stadium as
too
well.
Immediate.
You look at the stadium as well anyway. I mean, it's 48,000 capacity. I mean, there's still not that many stadiums in the league that are higher than that. So it's like kind of, do we need to at the moment? No, because it's not it's just not there yet. So maybe in, like I said, 2 or 3 years' time for established Premier League side, and we've achieved Europe, which again, that's still a long way off. And then maybe you think it's at the next step in this club. We're still very early on in Premier League season where we've been down out the doldrums for 8 years. I think it's 2 or 3 years in. If we continue on this upward trajectory which we're on, brilliant. And then we think about it then.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. The Keel crossing enables it a bit more. The infrastructure around the stadium's improving. I can think of a few people who go to the pub at full time, don't want there to be an extra 5,000 or 6,000 trying to get in the scrum to get served. Maybe it's one of them where, as and when more hotels get built, the club again look at it and think, right, well, everything around the ground is ready for us to now host extra fans. I mean, listen, how many were at that Stoke Cup game a few months ago? You know, and if we get a home draw,
and Huddersfield this season as well, you know.
Oh, it was Huddersfield was the one. Yeah, sorry, you're right. I've got my games mixed up. You know, there still isn't the appetite, I don't think, just yet for us to be selling 55,000 or 56,000 or whatever it is every single week. You know, we'll get there though. We will get there.
I think it's important to kind of point out as well that obviously extending the South Stand would be a very visible sign of investment, right? But the club have been investing all across the entirety of the club over the past few years, haven't they? You look at that Jermaine Defoe video that we talked about, I think, in the last pod that we did, the Q&A pod. But, you know, the Academy of Light has been invested into. There's been all sorts of investment made to improve the facilities there. Yeah. You've looked at the concourses have been done up. There's been investment into the coaching staff and the football staff, as well as the business side of things. So there's been continual investment in different areas of the club to build up those solid foundations. I think it's important that people don't overlook that, because while you can't see it, it's not evidenced by your own eyes on a Saturday afternoon, but that investment has been there, and that's critical in terms of how we've evolved and how we've grown, I guess, over the past few seasons. And it leads on to a question from Ben Hardy on X. Considering how strongly we've started this season, how great our recruitment has looked over the summer, do you think there's a risk of losing some of our key players? And we've covered the key players bit, or members of staff such as Lebris, Speakman, and you throw Gisolfi into there as well. Is there a risk of losing those behind the scenes people? And obviously Lebris is in front of the camera, but to other teams with more money than us later on in the season or next summer. And look, the reality is that other clubs will be watching Lebris. Other clubs will be looking at the job Speakman's done and looking at Gisolfi. And that's the bad thing, or that's negative that comes with your club doing well, isn't it? Because the players, management, coaching staff will be looked at by other clubs. We've gone from years of having players who we couldn't really get rid of and had to pay off because nobody wanted them. So if we're in a position where people are actually wanting our staff and our players and everything else, that's surely a positive. But how likely is it that risk becomes apparent?
Yeah, I think it's a definite risk. I'm not sure that clubs with more money is necessarily the thing to worry about, because we've seen it before, maybe even with Jack Clark. Getting a bigger pay packet doesn't necessarily mean it's the right step for you. People at the club must appreciate at the moment how much freedom they're being given, how much responsibility, how much trust is being placed upon them. And at the risk of sounding a bit hippie-ish here, there's a lot of people for whom that matters a whole lot more than extra money in the bank balance. None of these lads are on the breadline. They'll be earning competitive wages and be enjoying a nice standard of living. But if on a Monday you're getting to go into a job where you feel as if you're really being allowed to get your teeth stuck into it, that can go a long way. That said, I do get that point that Ben Hardy makes. There will be other clubs looking at us now. The problem is, for those clubs, it's very easy to just say, right, we'll nick the personnel from Sunderland. That's no good. You need all of the other things in place around it. So I'm not sure people would want to go elsewhere. I'm not sure people would think the grass was greener elsewhere, which was a phrase used earlier. If it happens, you can be fairly confident that Sunderland will be able to replace them. But yeah, people are going to have to think long and hard at the moment before leaving Sunderland, because we've got a good environment. Something you mentioned a few moments ago, Martin, that I agree with. I just want to back up. I think it's really pleasing to see the club spending good money on getting coaches and scouts and getting all of that type of person in the club. It might not be as glamorous as spending millions on a player and giving him a big fat contract, but you probably get more bang for your buck. Again, these are just estimated figures. Say you bring in a scout or a director of football or whatever it is, and you pay them $1 million a year. You get more back in them doing a good job than giving that $1 million to a player who maybe in the past didn't want to be here, but just takes the money and doesn't put the shift in. So that is how Sunderland are going to be able to compete with those teams whose budgets are much more significant than ours. It's using our money more sensibly. The negative to that is you then get brilliant people in the club, and it's inevitable that people will be looking at them and wondering, can they come to our team instead and do a job?
It's that funny thing, isn't it, where it's not always comparing like for like. And you can have on paper a bigger club coming in or a richer club coming in to get your staff, but the environment that they're going to go into might not be stable. You look at the people who've gone into Manchester United over the past, decade, and on face value, Manchester United's a huge club, but it's been a suicide mission for most of the managers who've gone in there and the coaches who have gone in. And, you saw, was it the sporting director who was at Newcastle went in there, then he didn't last for very long and he went out. So it's a bloody risky thing to do, especially when you've got a job that you're not only comfortable in, as Andrew said, but it's stable. And I think that's a huge selling point for us at the moment.
It is. That Man United example you gave, I'm pretty sure, didn't they pay the Mags
crazy
like a
money.
fair whack in compensation?
14 million quid, wasn't it?
Well, that's staggering. But you'd be better off just looking for somebody with the same credentials and the same skills who isn't going to cost 14 million in compensation.
And he's not there anymore, is he? Is that Dan Ashworth, isn't it?
No, he left. He left.
Well, that's the other thing. When you spend the money to bring somebody in, you've got to be sure that they're then going to be given the tools to do the job that they're being brought in for.
Yeah.
It seems pretty obvious and straightforward to us, but it doesn't always happen like that, does it?
It does not. Right, we'll take a short break there. We'll be back after a couple of ads to talk about the Everton game on Monday. We'll see you soon.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Carvana lets you buy your next car on your terms. Explore a massive inventory online, filter for what matters, and find your perfect match. Then choose delivery to your home or pick it up at one of Carvana's iconic car vending machines. Every car also comes with a 7-day money-back guarantee, so you can make sure it's the right fit. Buy your car on Carvana. Delivery or pickup fees may apply. Limitations and exclusions may apply. See our 7-day return policy at Carvana.com.
Carvana.
We all love a legendary comeback, and Degree Original Cool Rush is back and better than ever. Cool Rush isn't just a scent, it's a movement, a fan favorite that delivers bold, fresh vibes and all-day sweat protection. Whether you're heading to the gym, the office, or just trying to stay fresh on a long day, Cool Rush has your back. So if you haven't tried it yet, head to your local Walmart or Target and grab Degree Cool Rush, the fan favorite scent from the world's #1 antiperspirant brand.
Welcome back to How We're the podcast for the final section of our Q&A pod today. And Ant, we are going to field a few questions about the Everton game. Now, I'm going to read a few of these out together and we can have a bit of a chat about them. So Bjorn Shig on the website says, who is going to be selected at the back versus Everton with the 5 from the Chelsea game, plus Alderete? I can see us playing 5 at home versus Arsenal, but maybe 4 at the back versus Everton. If so, who misses out? Steve Richards on X at Stitcho Steve says, tactically, we were right on the money against Chelsea. It was a Labris masterclass, even urging us to go to get at them late on. Broby showed what he can bring. With 5 at the back, can we now go 2 up front at home? Gaz Fisher at Gaz J. Fisher says, how do you get Alderete back in the team after that? Gertrude was class. And FTM at Graham Irving on X says, if everybody is fit, what's your starting 11? So there's a couple of questions there, but I think the one that I want to go into first is that 5 at the back. Now, this was the first time we saw Lebris do this from the start of a game. All the way through his career with Sunderland so far, he's played 4 at the back, and it's been fairly predictable in terms of how we're going to shape up. This was different, and was it a tactical thing? Was it personnel? Danny Collins was talking to Chris and I on Sunday, and he was kind of saying that really it's very flexible because it could be a 3-4-3. Out of possession, you might drop back and it becomes a 5. In possession, we saw Trey Hume kind of go into midfield a few times, so that becomes a 4. Is it a football manager thing to kind of go, well, you got 5 at the back there and 3 there and 2 there or what have you? But how can we kind of get that balance? Because you've got, it's almost like we've got an overload of good players who can play at the back. Now, while they're all fit, that's one thing. But what do you see us doing against Everton?
Ooh, I don't know, to be honest, because you're right. At home, again, no disrespect towards Everton, but if you're looking at it thinking, is he going to play a back 5 at home to Everton? I'm not sure. But you look at how well it worked on Saturday, bar the first 5 minutes when we've conceded a daft goal. But we looked very, very solid. And you look at the takeaway performances at the back were probably Ballard and Getroida, who both were outstanding. Noddy Mukiele had a good game, don't get us wrong. But I thought them 2 were outstanding at the back. So you're like, them 2 for me probably play on Monday, which means Mukiele, if they're going to play a 4, either one of Mukiele or Hume need to go out. And then I think Alderweireld doesn't come back in. I've got to be honest. I don't think Alderweireld comes back in on Monday, because I think they've played so well. So you look at either one of Mukiele or Hume might have to go. But then does he put Getroida in the middle and make that a 3 again? And then it can just put the Fee out on the left, Traore or whoever out on the right, and then Isidore in front. So yeah, it's a wonderful conundrum to have, isn't it? The fact that we've got 7 top quality defenders at our disposal. I think Ronaldo will play left back. I think that's bad about it, because the fact he's come straight back in after a suspension, that's pretty much saying to me he's definitely starting. And I would play Ballard and probably Getroida with Mukiele on the right, which means dropping Trey Hume. So it's absolutely mad, isn't it? But I don't, like I say, if I'm struggling with it and I'm a fan, can you imagine what Regis is doing? It's and he'll know, he'll have it in his mind now what we're doing on Monday. He'll have in his mind what's happening and stuff like that. So I can see arguments for both, but I think we're at more questions going back to a 4 than what we are having a 5, because it's literally maybe 1 or 2 changes, as in maybe someone comes in for Traore. So maybe it's just the 1 change actually, where someone comes in for Traore. He might even go and change, but I do think Talby will start. That's me one thing. I think Talby will start. And if he just thinks I put Talby in for Traore, and they just have to change the back, and Alderweireld just stays on the bench, and if someone needs to come off this, that, and the other, I think that's probably more the case of what we're doing. And then if that, like I say, that means we're playing a 5 against Everton at home, then so be it. Because I still think we proved on Saturday we scored twice. So it's proven there that we can still score with that formation, and we looked solid enough as well.
If somebody had said to you, Andrew, before kickoff against Chelsea, that you'd be questioning whether Alderweireld would come back into the side the next time he's available, you'd have thought they were nuts, wouldn't you? But the fact that Geertruida came in and played so well, all credit to him coming into that sort of game after not having started the game. Fantastic. The interesting thing as well with that is I do wonder whether we'll kind of stick to whether you want to call it 3 or 5 at the back, because it potentially reduces the dependency on 2 wingers playing, and we can potentially get another player up front in the centre as Steve Richards had talked about, going 2 up front. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if Lebris wanted to try that, to try to get a little bit more a little bit more happening in that sort of in the box in that final third.
Well, it's clear that because he's spoken a lot about how they've been having to talk to Broby and explain that it's going to be a different role he needs to perform compared to when he was playing in the Netherlands. He's now getting that clearly because we saw it. His hold-up play was phenomenal for the goal.
Brilliant.
It was class, wasn't it?
Did you see the social media post that say on Saturday night Brian Broby was holding up traffic on the A1?
Yeah, that a mate of mine sent that to me at about, I think it was at about 2:30 in the morning on WhatsApp. So he was clearly still in town celebrating the win. I liked that one, and I liked somebody on Ready to Go, I think, said we need to put up a statue for Speakman, Christian Speakman, and you can bet that Siddiqui would be marking it as soon as it gets installed. So it's brilliant, isn't it, when we're all having a bit of a laugh. I've lost me train of thought now. I'm too busy talking about jokes.
We're trying to pick a side for Monday.
Yes. Well, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if now that Broby is learning what's expected of him, if he wants to put Broby and Isidore together, I think that would be quite good to see. You will notice, though, I'm an absolute gob, and I love talk, and I love the sound of my own voice. Every other question, I've been desperate to jump in and throw in my 2 pence. And yet when poor Ant there was asked about who should play in defence, I just sat back and kept stum because I've got no... It's the same with the forwards as well. It's really hard to predict a team now because... Lebris isn't just making it up as he goes along. It's all thought out and properly considered. But we have got so many players who are worthy of a place in the team. It is really difficult to say who you think should start.
Yeah.
It's a tough position. Like we always say, it's a nice one to have, but we've got no chance of predicting things at the moment.
You would think as well. You look at definite starters. You would say obviously Ruff's in goal is bad about that's happening in a barring injury. But he's starting in goal. Mukiele, you need him for his long throws because it just gives us that extra, that extra attacking impetus. So he starts for me. Ballard, definitely. And so then it's either Getroide, Alderete or Hume if they're playing a 5 or a 4. You happen to miss either Hume or two of the 3 if it's a 4, 1 of if it's a 5. For me, it'll be Alderete just because it works so well on Saturday, which sounds amazing to say that. Then you've got Xhaka Siddiqui definitely starting in midfield. You would say Enzo Lafia hasn't done anything wrong, so he's probably still. The only question mark for me is, does he change to 4 and does he play Traore? So if it's that for me is the 2 question marks on there. It's one of the defence and Traore. That's the only 2 positions there, and that's only if he changes formation with one of them. So it's and that's probably it works out where we say we don't know, but if you kind of break it down, it is a little bit easier. The midfield is definitely going to be Siddiqui, Xhaka, in the fear. I think. Well, I'll be fairly confident he'll not change that. And it's like I said, whether he changes formation is he drops one of Hume on Mukiele for me, and I don't think he'll drop Mukiele. So I think that'll be Hume if it's a 4 and Traore. I think he'll probably get dropped for Talby or Broby, I think.
Well, here you go. Traore is going to score a hat-trick against Everton and going to win.
I hope he does, Matt. I hope he does. I defended him to the hilt, didn't I? I defended the hilt on the last, but it shows where we are. I defended the hilt on the last podcast. And then I'm thinking on Monday night, do we drop him?
No, but look, as we keep saying, it's an excellent position to be in. And you know what? Like, we've had managers in the past, haven't you, where you've been talking about the team and go, why the hell isn't Antoine Semenyo getting a run out? All this sort of... So we've had these things. With Lebris, every single player who's in the 11 or on the bench will be there for a specific reason.
Yeah, and we mentioned it, Martin, didn't we, in the last podcast? We mentioned that, I think it was you brought it, you've got your starters and you've got your finishers. So, you know, he's going to be looking at 60 minutes in against Everton, say for a 0-0 or whatever. He's going to high on, you know, a my ender or if he's not playing or an attacker or something like that, change it up like that. And then the fact he subs this season have been very, very good, mind. Will sit for the Brits. He come in for a little bit of criticism.
Yep.
Come in for a little bit of criticism last year, didn't he, with his subs? And then at the end, he started working it out, didn't he? And obviously in the playoff final, it changed the game. His subs changed the game. And this year, his subs have been magnificent. I will say that. Bringing Isidore on at the right times before he was starting games was you know, absolutely brilliant. And bringing Broby on, which Broby didn't come on, if you remember, against Wolves. It was Mayenda, wasn't it? And bringing him on and trusting him in that. And he got a good half an hour, didn't he? And trusting him in that position there. And it won us the game. His hold-up play was fantastic for that. Absolutely brilliant. And then laying it back for another sub for Talby to come on, banging into the corner. Brilliant goal. Brilliant substitutions by Reg. And you know what it was? It was also as well against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, us having a go. Him having the full belief in them players that we could get the 3 points and him taking that risk. Because, you know, it could have worked out. They could have scored or whatever, you know what I mean? And we were looking at, well, why has he done that for? Why did he not bring on a defender, you know what I mean? And shore it up and, you know what I mean? Take the point. He wanted all 3 points there and he got them. And that was, it's on him for that, you know what I mean? Brilliant, brilliant substitutions.
Well, I think that is an excellent place to leave this Q&A episode. So thank you very much, Ant. Always a pleasure, mate.
Yeah, yes, very much enjoyed it, mate. Especially being up this early hour. Loved it. So
They have to go back to bed without haste is the
yeah. And to be fair as well, during this one, mate, the dog has been here for an hour and a half, bless her, and she hasn't uttered a word. So there we go.
Hey, there you go. Very good. Well behaved. And thank you as always, Andrew.
Yeah, cheers. Loved talking to you both. It's good times at Sunderland at the moment. Let's make the most of it while we can.
I think we've all got to enjoy it and take it as it comes because, yeah, as we've alluded to in this podcast, we've all seen enough matches to have seen the other side of it. So make the most of it while it lasts. And thank you to everybody who's listened. We'll be back tomorrow with another podcast on How We're the Podcast. And also keep on checking out rokerreport.sbnation.com for all of your Sunderland content. So until tomorrow, it's goodbye from us.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.